morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone. And today I'm here with someone I want to learn from a lot. Joseph Rosado. Hi, Joseph. How are you?
Hi, Kathy. Good, thank you.
Yeah, great. Well, okay, so guys, I haven't gotten to go on a journey with Joseph, but I know lots of people who have because of our conscious or our co-creators convergence group. And people have gone on journeys to actually, I guess, England and South America, right?
Yes.
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 So let's talk about you and your first in your history is fascinating about how you became a speaker, writer, mentor, and spiritual guide, and spent years at the Glastonbury tour at the Chalice Well. Could you talk a little bit about it, because it's a fascinating story? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I can. Thank you, Kathy. Yes, I guess my path. I found my path in 1992. Um, I lived in New York. I had a really successful business at the time, and I worked through Joseph Campbell and Arthurian mythologies, and I studied all of that on my path. And then in 1995, my partner and I, at the time, were hired as the first Americans to become guardians of the Chalice Well and Gardens in Glastonbury, England, like one of the most sacred wells in the world,
Right.
and a peace garden. So for me, it was a choice of leaving a lucrative business to a calling, which is what it was. It was a calling. Um, it wasn't about money. Money, what I made in New York in a week, I made in a year at the Chalice Well. So it wasn't about the money, but it was quite a calling, though. I mean, the Chalice Well has 65,000 people a year, more or less, come through the gates, in charge of the retreat house, and bringing the charity up to sustainability was really the job at that time.
Oh, okay.
And leaving the well, my tenure at the well, I continued on doing sacred journeys to the sacred British Isles, which includes Scotland and Ireland as well. Uh, I lived in Panama for a while and was hoping to start a retreat center there. That didn't work out. So we're back home in this country. So, yes, to me, was more about listening. When you have that many people coming through your gates and you're a gatekeeper, it's about listening. It's about, um, and it was open to all walks of life. It wasn't one denomination, it was all denominational there. It was my job to explain that. Also, the mysteries of the well. The Chalice Well was known for um, the Holy Grail. It's where Joseph of Arimathea came with the blood of Christ and put it in the well. It's why they call it the Chalice Well. So it's a beautiful place. It's both energies are there. It's so androgynous. The upper room in a 16th century retreat house, has the upper room, which was built in the liking of the Last Supper. Very heavy Christ energy. Where the garden is Magdalene. The garden is fully a feminine energy. And what a wonderful thing for a masculine to actually go into that garden and feel the polarities. You have to talk in certain language to men when you speak of the feminine aspect that we do carry. And what a beautiful thing that was because of the turning of it all. We are in a feminine age at this point. Why do we take people on pilgrimages there? It's not like the pilgrimages of old, when you had suffering. It took months. You had to clothe, you had to do this, and you had to do that. You had to walk barefoot, and there was a lot of suffering in those days. I don't see that now. I don't feel that you need to suffer to gain wisdom. These sites alone will give you the knowledge and the wisdom once you plug in to them. So anyway, in getting back to that, I always ask, are we waiting for someday? What a question. Why not now? Are we waiting for someday? We gain this understanding of how quickly the world changes from one time to the other. If we can think back to the last couple of years of this pandemic and how it's changed the world so drastically, the way we think, the way we work, the way we associate to other people. And I say, you know what? It's time to take the cobwebs off the passport. Let's get that passport out of the shelf and go to the store and come find that joy and passion that comes to you. If you can envision that right now, it's time for you to take a pilgrimage now. Many times, and I remember telling my young son years ago, I had to take him out of the schoolyard and away from his playmates. He was getting in trouble. Once I did that, he's become a very successful young man now, and I'm so proud of him and my daughter as well. But it's the same thing here. Many times we have to leave the same playground we've been in for so long. Why? And I wrote something here. It's why we need to travel. We travel because we need to, because distance and difference are the secret tonic of creativity. When we get home, home is still the same, but something in our mind has been changed, and that changes everything. We don't come back the same person. You can't. It's impossible. You can try all you want, but it can't, and I'll tell you why. Here you go. We got this special access into Stonehenge. Now, how many thousands of years are we talking about Stonehenge here and how it was built and the mysteries of that? We have the same DNA once we hit that ground. And we're in the stones of Stonehenge. We're not on cordoned off, and we get special access to that. Even the stones of Avebury, the largest stone circle of the world, the first Christian abbey in Glastonbury, the old religion of Glastonbury as well, the Chalice Well. So this little place is steeped in all this mythology, the Arthurian legends, and I can go on and on. But the beautiful thing is that we are able to plug in to these ancient sites, and many of them that we go to, we even go into crop circles and meditate there and sit there and pray there as well. What's happening here? Your DNA is just moving and bringing in all this information. It's about wisdom, but it's also about understanding where you are. In the years that I've done this, is almost 25, no one that I remember or I know has ever come back the same. They went seeking adventure and they came back with an experience they'll never forget. And it doesn't happen instantaneously. Like some people say, okay, I'm going to go to a sacred stone and I'm going to touch this and that and I'm going to open portals and I'm going to. It does not happen instantaneous for many. Sometimes it takes months and some years. But for those who have come with us on these sacred journeys, including this group that's coming with us now, who came last time, this is their second time coming. That says something. And the second time is always most powerful when you do come, because you've already seasoned yourself, if you will, for these ancient sites. And people would say, well, what makes Chalice Well a sacred site? Intention. You know how many millions of people must have come through the well already and sat there and watered the gardens with their tears? It's the way it was. I would see people come to the gates and their eye colors change. They would start crying, or they start laughing, or they start with joy. You see people from a Muslim and a Jew hugging in the middle of of the garden, or a
Yeah.
pagan and a Catholic. It's different. There's no dogma there. It's only truth, and the truth is in front of you. God gave us this beautiful, beautiful world to live in, and the Chalice Well represents much of that. The Chalice Well is known as the heart chakra of Glastonbury, and Glastonbury is known as the heart chakra of the world.
That's right.
And Glastonbury is also known as the sister of Sedona. So we have to connect the dots here, but it's important that we do understand. And I'm going to get, if I can, Cassie, I'm going to talk a little bit about the 6 stages of pilgrimage.
Okay. Sure.
And I won't speak at length on that because it is a lengthy subject. And first, you have the yearning. This number 1 is the yearning to go on a pilgrimage. And I'm trying to see who, Emily Dickinson said, "We thirst at first." That's the yearning that we have. One day we wake up and you think, my God, I need something different. Why am I not moving? Why am I feeling stagnant in my life? Well, you need to move into that flow of the universe. And the flow of the universe is telling you, you need to go. You need to go away. It doesn't necessarily need the sacred British Isles. It could be Costa Rica. It could be somewhere else, India. But you have to get away from the schoolyard that you've been used to that, to open up much of this. And because to me, the old story has finally reached the end of its telling. This is what that is telling you. This story no longer works. This chapter is over. That's why I can't move into another direction. So how do I get help with that? Do I see a psychotherapist? Do I go to a psychiatrist? No, not necessarily. You don't need all those things. The old story has finally reached the end of its telling, and the space is clear for a new story to emerge. This cannot happen while the old story carries hope. And that's where we get stuck many times. So going on journeys like this, in most, I would say, of the years I've been doing this, it's been 95% women. Not very surprising because Avalon is the Isle of Woman. It's where the Mists of Avalon was written about. And how important is that for a masculine now? When I say 95% women come to all these pilgrimages, I always ask, where are the men? Where are the men? We need this now in this age. This is an age, it's just the Aquarian age on that. I know years ago I had said to somebody asked me, well, how do you perceive a warrior, war, all these things? You men always say you're a warrior. What does that mean? And that was in 1997. I remember I was asked that question at a Wise Women's Council. And I said to them, what we need now is men to stand forth and make sure that the voice of the feminine is heard.
Oh.
That's a warrior. That's a warrior to me in here, because that's where we are at that stage. Once we have that understanding, then we're able to gain the wisdom around that. There's no conflict between masculine and feminine. But see, these are the things that we see, especially when you come into a sacred site. Some stones or some areas are very masculine. That's great, because if you're a feminine, you can gain that as well, that understanding of the masculine. And for the men, the same thing, because they're in a safe space. There's no judgment there. They can cry. They can hug. They can feel. They can get down on their knees if they have to. What is more sacred than that when you think about that for a moment? So first, I'm going to go back to the yearning real quick, because
Okay.
this is where we were. We have to thirst at first.
Okay.
Then we have the preparation. Number 2 is the preparation, where we prepare. In old times, in medieval times, they used to take pilgrims months to prepare for a long pilgrimage or a long journey. It doesn't need to be that now, even though we do have these teleconference calls once a week, which is part of the preparation for this trip that's coming up in July. The preparation, getting into your journal, dusting off that
Passport.
report, yes, and making sure that it's still good as well. Knowing where you're going, study. There's nothing wrong when you have someone like us being a shepherd in these pilgrimages that we take, these sacred journeys. It's one thing because we allow the people to go into a site and witness it and wander on their own. They don't need me to stand there and say, "Well, this was in 1952." This, that they can get that all on their own, and that's my way of doing things. So, my point being is that you need to know where you're going and what more or less you're going to find there. And that doesn't mean that you're going to find something special, or it just means that you're going to find this row of stones, these standing stones, Merlin's cave, and what does that mean, and so on and so on. Because the magic never ends when you go on these trips. And when you come home, you know what? The magic never ends. Every day is magic. I mean, Einstein used to say every day was a miracle, but I say every day has magic in it. Everything we do. So that's the preparation, journal writing, researching where you're going, including researching the people that you're going with as well.
Okay.
Who's leading the trip? What credentials do they have for this? And it's not so much having the credentials; it's more or less saying, what have they done? And where are the testimonials? What have other people felt? I can, do a sales pitch, and not that we need to do that on these trips at all, but then you have the journey. Wow, you get there. The magic bus picks you up, and we take you to Avebury. The first thing, jet lagged and all, you're going to Avebury. Why? Well, it's halfway to the Chalice Well from Heathrow Airport. So we stop at Avebury so you can infuse yourself with the energies of these stones. That is a natural getting over your jet lag. And then we have lunch at the Red Lion Inn, which is the most haunted pub in all of Britain. But the food is really good. They may be haunted, but the food is really good. And by that time, at lunchtime, you could see the people waking up. They're getting up. They're excited now. They've only been a couple of hours from the plane, and here they are, immersed immediately into the sacredness and the energy of these sacred stones. How beautiful is that? And we arrive at the Chalice Well 90 minutes later, and we have an orientation, 16th century retreat house. And we go find our rooms, and we go to the upper room for a quick meditation, and then out to the garden. By then, all of the tourists are gone, and we have this beautiful, sacred 4-acre, beautiful garden to ourselves. And we go do a cleansing, a purification ceremony to begin in this beautiful holy well. So that is part of the journey. But that journey is just the journey to where we just got to. Then you have the arrival. Wow, isn't the journey and the arrival the same? No. The journey's along the way, and what happens along the way. We come out of Stonehenge, and there's another road, and there's a crop circle, and then we go to a row of yew trees in there. That you're arriving to all these sites. It's not a journey for one place. This is the beauty of it, that we go to many of these sacred sites to have that arrival. Because when you arrive at each of these, your arrival to Stonehenge is different than your arrival to Avebury. Two different things. But they all meet somewhere in the etheric. That's the arrival. Then when we're there, we get the sacred experience. Wow. Sacred experience. What does that mean? You plug in. You plug in. This is your experience. This is you for you to wander to go. Maybe you have one stone in particular that's calling you, or maybe one well, one area where it is. And we haven't even got to Scotland yet. But this encompasses all of that as well. When you go to all these beautiful sites and you see how the ancient wisdom brings us into this contemporary mindfulness that we really need. We need to be in the now. It's important, but that doesn't mean that we don't take all the ancient wisdom, learn from that, and then create our own. In 100 years from now, they may be looking at us and saying, wow, they had something there. It's the same thing as the, I forgot what the other name. Well, anyway, let's continue on. That's the sacred experience that we have in each one of these sites. Now we go to Scotland. That's a 6-hour trip from Glastonbury. Then we go to the Isle of Skye, one of the most beautiful places in one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Last time I went to Scotland, I didn't think I wanted to come back at all. It was just breathtaking. Every mile that we went was breathtaking, between all the lakes and the mountains and the trees, and just the beautiful people as well. It was another way of living, and that was before the pandemic. And when the pandemic hit us a couple of years ago, that's the first thing I thought about, the purity. Even though Scotland, did suffer through that pandemic as well, but that land, if that wasn't healing, nothing was. I mean, it was just a beautiful thing. And then at that time, we went to the Isle of Iona, which is another amazing sacred site in the world. And this year we're going through different places in Scotland, but we're staying in Skye, and that's going to be very special as well. Then we have the return. Oh God, the long-awaited return. Do you want to return? What does the return mean? It means I'm coming home. I'm coming home for the first time, because this is different for you. You've left a hectic pace, and tell me it hasn't been a hectic pace or at a standstill if you were thinking about going on a sacred journey on there. It's fear many times to make that move. I go back to, well, what's the saying? If you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. And I think that's what the apostles were told by Jesus. And the apostles that had fear and stepped out of the boat went right down. We're the ones that trusted in the world, in the word of God, in the word of Jesus, walked on water as well. We can. That is a analogy. So, but coming to these places allows you to rid of the doubt. One thing we always have in our life is doubt. For many of us, I'm not saying all of us. That doubt does not work for you. Change that doubt. Many times, it's discernment that we need. How can we find a discernment? How can we get that balance? Every day when we come home, this is the arrival now. It used to be we'd have to make spontaneous decisions in our life. That's how the fast pace of this world, or at least in America, spontaneous decisions. How can you make those spontaneous decisions if you're not clear? There's no clarity. This is the clarity you come back with. You do the ordinary things extraordinarily well. And that's what you have to be aware of. When I say to you, this doesn't happen instantaneously. Sometimes it takes weeks, months, years. But something happens as soon as you come home. And and people will look at you and say to you, you look different. What is it that that's the difference? Because you come back beaming. Your aura grows. For those who can't see auras, they will. Guaranteed. So effectively is what I'm saying about these pilgrimages, that you can come home um, and do things effectively well as well. And that's the return. So I just gave you a brief little synopsis of the 6 stages of pilgrimage. But in our teleconferences, we talk in depth about the stages of pilgrimage. Why? Because we're the ones that are going. And we invite everyone to come onto our calls on Fridays on that. Most of the group, or all of the group for now, is going on the journey. Again, most of them for the second time. And there you can get a little feel for what it is we're talking about. Our teleconference calls are not sales generated, or we do it because there are those that really resonate what's being said, and then that kind of makes the journey a little bit better, takes the thirst away somewhat, um, and then they come back. And then again, the beautiful thing about the preparation that we just talked about, was when we all meet at Heathrow, they've seen each other for months on the teleconference calls. So everyone knows each other, who's hugging and who's crying, and you could just feel the beauty of that essence of all the souls that come there. Um, so for many years, I've done this, and if I had to use one word to describe all of that I just said, and mind you, I can't remember what I just said. So anyway, it's transformation. The word transformation.
Mm.
These are transformative retreats. We don't necessarily call them pilgrimages anymore. Well, I don't. Um, and they are transformational journeys. Everyone transforms. Why you're steeped into all these amazing sites that are part of your DNA as well. You're allowed to wander. And that's the one thing that's so important when you reach these sites. Just go, wander, find the place, find what's calling you. Write, journal, keep a journal on all of this. These things you can go back to when you arrive at home and say, wow, yes, I remember that. You can even draw pictures. I do little sick people in my thing, but that's the only thing I can draw. Uh, so it's good that you can go into a site, sit on a stone or a tree or what have you, and just draw the site in your journal. That's always been very helpful. Maybe not at that point, but later on when you come home. Um, so I think I'm complete with that for now,
Oh, thank
Kathy.
you so much, Joseph. So I have lots of questions, and I want to invite people in the audience. If you have questions, please share them, so I don't hog this time with Joseph, but I can. Um, okay, so you lived in a very sacred site with tremendous energy. Do you feel energy?
Yes,
Okay.
very much so. Hmm.
Okay. And so do you find what are the dates someone just asked? What are the dates
The,
of this next trip?
from July 8th to the 20th.
Okay. Okay.
So we spend a week in Avalon
Okay.
at the Chalice Well, and then from there we go to a lot of sites back home to the mother for amazing dinner. That's another wonderful thing. The food is always, we have it catered for us. It's all vegetarian because we have to at the Chalice Well. They don't allow meat or fish or what have you.
Yeah.
Um,
Good.
so that's a week there, and then on the 15th, I believe, we drive up to Scotland, which is a 6-hour drive. But it's a beautiful drive, and we stop along the way to have some munchies and little bathroom stops or what have you. But once you get past that border into Scotland, when you say feel energy, absolutely
Wow.
a huge shift. It's almost like something dropped off, but it's beautiful.
Okay. Okay. So for people that don't know anything about Glastonbury and that whole area, could you talk about the ley lines? And because a lot of the people that watch this are from England, so and they actually, in fact, somebody yesterday was just sitting by the tour doing a Facebook Live. So
Wow.
the people in Europe know about the heart chakra, just like people in the West know about Sedona, as you said. But these portals of energies, they're ancient, ancient. They have an ancient origin, I think. Do you feel do you feel the ley lines intersecting, and that's part of what's in those stones, or could you
You
share some
can.
of
You
that?
do. You do. And I was privileged when I was at the well in my tenure to meet a gentleman called Hamish Miller. He wrote a book called The Sun and the Serpent. Many people there know that book, and many people here know that book, The Sun and the Serpent. And he brought me to uh, King Arthur's court, which is a place in the garden of the well,
Okay.
where the healing pool is and the waterfall, and there the Michael and Mary line cross. And he was the one that brought me there and said, "You can become multidimensional in this spot." And I said, don't touch me." And it's true. You can actually go into a spot and just almost like disappear in there. So it made a believer out of me. And to have such, since then, Hamish has passed. Uh, but what a privilege that was to have someone who wrote a book about all these ley lines, including the ley lines coming from the Tor. Um, you got in Cornwall as well, plenty of ley lines, and especially if you go to St. Michael's Mount at the tip of Cornwall as well. So yes, you can feel very strong energy, and at some point, you don't need the dowsing rods. Uh, you can use them if you're more comfortable with them, but I use just a little pendulum, and watch that pendulum go nuts when you're above a ley line. Again, you journal. Where was I when this happened, and so on. But not only that, when you're on that ley line, what is in your conscience? What are you thinking? What is the heart telling you? More importantly than what the pendulum is doing. Uh,
Right. Right,
so
right. So I have the pictures of one of my healer friends, Tamer Oviatt, in Stonehenge, and there's so much light, energy, colored lights, orbs, beings. Really, it looks like beings with her. Have you felt that as well?
well, we've not only felt that, we've seen that.
Oh, you
Uh,
have?
we have a picture of Unity Grace.
Uh-huh. I know who she is.
Yes, she was at the Stones with us one morning, and we took a picture of her, and you can see there was another being right next to her. She was
Did she,
beaming out. We have that. I'm gonna have Nina post that again. But
did she ever crystal skull with her at the time too?
I don't remember.
Okay, because that could have been that.
No, not in the stones. No, she didn't have anything in the stones
Oh,
other
okay.
than herself. Yes.
Wow.
But yeah, she was an amazing gal, let me tell you.
Wow. Well, that's what I mean. I know the amazing, Darlis Mays and David.
Mhm.
Well, I guess Linda Rosenthal may have gone with you,
Yeah,
and Noelle and
Robin.
Bob, and yeah.
Yeah.
So there's been lots of my friends have gone, but I haven't
Well,
got
we
to go.
had Talia was there,
Yeah, Talia and David.
Dinama.
Yeah,
Yeah, we had quite a bit there. That
yeah.
was a full
So,
house. We had it was
so
heaven on earth.
how many are set up right now to go?
We have 8, I believe, and we have room for 4 more.
Oh, okay.
And of course, we have some interest coming in. I think it's that um, people wanting to make it happen, and we just allow them. It's when they make that choice on their own
Yeah.
is when the trips are more powerful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's so the other thing, who built all of this? I mean, are you, because you were there long enough for you heard the Druid stories, you probably heard ET origin stories. You've
Yeah.
heard everything. What do you think's true?
Man, that has gone through generations and phases. Is the only way I can say that, because you have a procession area at the well in between these two ancient yew trees. That was the procession area through the garden, through the well, and then up to the Tor, because the Tor is right next to the Chalice Well.
Right.
Uh, and that was the days of the old religion. That was the Druids and the pagans, and they honored everything about the earth. So it wasn't about any religion, so to speak. And then the first Christian abbey was built, and by Joseph of Arimathea came and built a small church which burned down, and then the big abbey was put up through that. So that changed. That was another phase, another era. You could see the monks running through all of town. Um, that went through its phase of destruction as well. And then now it's a whole different story. So people, like I said, people of all walks of life come to the well. And many times I was pulled to the side and asked, "This is a Christian site, isn't it?" And I would, and they try to corner me into, and for me, it's all encompassing. To say it's all denominational here. Um, open yourself up to the beauty of not only the garden, but look at the differences between the flowers and the water you drink there. The most holy water, it's Chalabet, it's red. It's called the Red Spring. Back in the old religion, it was called the Red Spring for other reasons. And then in the times of Christianity, it was called the blood of Christ. But it was part of the woman. And when you think about the red and the Chalabet and the iron, there's also stability in all that. We drink from the lion's head when we go to Chalice Well, and then we sit at the well itself. So when you talk about the different phases of what Glastonbury has gone through, and including the Arthurian times as well, the times of Merlin, it's a very tiny town. And to be steeped in all this amazing energy, wow, it could be very explosive. Down in the high street, it could be very chaotic many times. So where do you go? You go back to the mother, you go back to the Chalice Well, which is, oh, I feel good. I feel comfort here. So
Well,
I don't
I
know.
think right now would be a great time to go this trip, because you're not going to have. I know there's pent up demand to visit places, but there's not going to be the same quantity of tourists that are going on trips in Europe this summer as there would have been 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it was probably a very busy place in the
It
summer, right?
is. It's a very busy place. And when I first got to the well, the retreat house, which is called Little St. Michael's, um, was only at 25% occupancy.
Hmm.
My job was to bring revenue to the charity because the Chalice Well Trust, it is a charity. So we had to keep it out of the hands of private hands that might have closed the doors to the well. Um, Within 6 months, we had that retreat house to 95% occupancy.
Wonderful.
And now you have to book the retreat house a year and a half ahead of time
Wow.
to get in. So
Good
when you say,
job.
yes, I look back, I mean, that's part of the legacy. I always say that's it. That was my legacy. Even the bookshops and everything else. When you have that amount of people in your garden, 65,000 people, you got to offer them something because they want to cement that visit that they just had. So we enhanced the bookshop. A bookshop that was doing 19,000 pounds a year was now doing 129,000 pounds a year.
Perfect. Yes.
You see, so the raising, that's how you make things sustainable. Even our business here, we started in 1,400 square feet. Now we're up to 7,000 square feet.
Wow.
And And so not that this is boasting in any way. All I'm saying is you put your energy into what needs to be done. And this is not a place that we have. We are a nonprofit here as well, but we do a lot of good things throughout the community, the homeless, women's education, so on and so on and so on, kids, food, wherever is needed something. Um, so that's all a piece of it. And volunteering in all these different things. Just this morning, I read that 8.1 million people quit their jobs in March. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of jobs to be had out there. But what does that tell you? That some of these people are, it's not working anymore. What it was they had, and
Right,
so on.
right.
They need something new. Well, this is a perfect trip for those who are in that
Yes.
place of no longer and not yet. It's that perfect place to do this type of trip because you come back with more of an understanding and wisdom, and maybe a change of focus in your vocation too.
Right.
We, we need more love in this world, and this is one way of finding it.
So,
So
okay, so I agree totally. I see that people are the pause that this lockdown shutdown caused allowed people to really go do some soul searching at first, and then now it's still like what makes me feel good? What how can I show my love for the world and myself by doing something that's my gift? And so transformational work like this and the classes that you're doing and all of the work that you've been doing besides it, do you want to share? Well, okay, first I want to ask a question before we get off of the England trip about the crop circles because they are permanent. Are you pretty sure there'll be one
well,
right when
you
you're
know,
going to be there? How did you put an order in?
we put an order in. We did, but you pointed up. You pointed up. I'm gonna come back to that in a minute. You're pointing up. Okay. This is why we go in July, because July and August are those crop circle times.
Okay.
That's when most of them come out. So they even have a crop circle symposium going on in July because this is when the crop circles show up. Now, when you point up, many times I said point down because these crop circles could have been created by something magnetic pulling the uh, crops down from the bottom. We're all looking up.
I don't know. I've seen video footage of red balls that created them, and so and I know the energy that's inside of these crop circles. People talk about that's life changing too. That something about lying down in the middle of a crop circle right after it's been before it gets cut down.
Before the farmers cut it down. And that's so true. I mean, I think the first time, maybe it was the second trip, Nina had laid down on a crop circle. I mean, laid down, and many of the people did. And yes, it is a whole different. Again, it's the awareness that's created amongst that, the clarity, the focus of where you're at, where your back is touching, and what's happening to me right now. Um, and it's that simple. Just ask those questions of yourself. And when you're laying down on a crop circle and you look up at the sky, what do you see? I mean, sometimes beautiful skies, beautiful clouds that are changing forms in front of you, and maybe they're not changing forms. Maybe you're changing the forms of them
Uh,
somehow because you're laying on this crop circle. Very powerful, very magnetic, and very healing as well.
Well, one of my friends from England's on Denise. Hi, Denise. And she goes, her birthday was last month, and she went to the Glastonbury tour for her birthday.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah, so I'm glad she's here, and she has a show too. So, hi, Denise. So, Denise, Joseph was he and a friend were guardians of the Chalice Well. Is that the best way to explain it?
Yes, yes.
And that was back in the 90s, in 1996 to 19 how to
Yes,
2000.
2000.
Wow. So for 4 years, so you know all the ins and outs, you know where all the secret places are, you know all the people to connect with. Okay, so here we go. She played with the fairies. Here we go. She played with the fairies in the trees at the base of the tour.
Absolutely. Yes. What a great place. And, living at the well, I was, it was a 24/7 job when you lived there, because when the people leave, you have to go around and clear the garden of all this energy that was left there. But at the nighttime is when I would sit there in the dark and I would see all the little lights going on, and in different places that I would find and sit. And I bring many of our people to these little magic places that I found while I was living there. Um, so, yes, that's all available there to you. And again, it's just believing.
Right.
That's it.
Well, I think it's the fairies and the elementals are a higher dimensional reality. That's why lots of people can't see them. So if you're vibrating at and if your consciousness can handle the higher dimensional aspects, that's when you get to play. That's when you get to experience it. And Denise does that. It's wonderful. She says, yes, I stayed at the Chalice Well Gardens for 3 nights on my birthday. The energy at night at the Red Spring is amazing. Well,
Mm.
Denise, Joseph is taking a group there, so maybe you guys can connect when in July from the 8th to the 20th. So we'll connect you guys and see what happens. You never know. You never know. So,
I
so
think the thing with the fairies was not so much seeing that people expect to see, it was listening, because they speak to you, and opening up that dimension of hearing, that you actually can say, well, that wasn't really my thought form, but that thought form that just came into my mind came from somewhere.
right.
Um, and that's and then they know that you have the authority to be there. And by authority, Merlin used to say that when you walk into a grove of trees, go in and say, I have authority to be here. And authority doesn't mean what most people think of authority. It just lets them know that you're capable of being there and listening to them, and you're there in good conscience.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so tell me more about Merlin, because that I love alchemy and the whole idea of that. Could you experience? Well, of course, you heard the stories of Merlin because that's the origin space. But did you feel any of the magic or feel him?
Oh, well, I felt the energy of Merlin in many places, because in 1992, I studied something called Merlin's Footsteps.
Oh,
And that's a men's group that I had started, and it was all about the Arthurian and Avalonian system. And a lot of our ritual work, ceremonial work, was based on the Merlin. Um, there was even a book called The 21 Lessons of Merlin
oh, I don't know
that's
that.
still out there. And I knew the author at the time, and I had read the draft before the book came out. And it pretty much talks about opening the quarters. Again, when you equate this to our American Indians, when we open the locations in the
The four
corners and everything,
corners.
it's the same thing. Yeah, they did. This is all within that realm. And it's Merlin was very much what I would say, not only his his magic. And I'm just gonna say that because it just came into my mind. I started to write something, Merlin and the prophet and the wizard. And I pictured Merlin and Christ sitting down in front of a fire, chatting about. miracles, and magic.
Wow.
And what do you,
Same difference, only different names
yeah,
for
basically,
perspective.
and that's the chat that they had,
Wow.
where you wouldn't find that many places where you would find Christ and Merlin speaking to each other, and, and so when you talk about Merlin, and again his adventures with Arthur and the teachings of Arthur, the 21 Lessons of Merlin has much of it when Arthur was a young man, a young child actually, and then grew up to a man under the wings of Merlin there.
Yes. Yes.
We have to keep it real, Kathy. Many times, we can talk about these things, but how do we bring that into the real world? How do we use it now? When we go on these sacred journeys, we have to come back to what I had said before. And how do we do that extraordinarily well? Again, that's bringing it home. That's bringing it
That's
to
right.
the now. How
Right.
can I get from these ancient sites, unlock all this knowledge and wisdom that I have and understanding, and share it with others? Um, so,
Well, Joseph, will you show your pendant so people can see the Chalice Well? That's the cover, right?
yes, this is the, oops, I'm the other way.
You
This
got
is the, this is the cover of the, I don't know which way to turn. The light is so
it.
bad.
It's good.
So anyway, yes, this was given to the world by Frederick Bly Bond back in the early 1900s. And as a matter of fact, he was an architect, and he was thrown out of the Church of England because he did things like this. I mean, this is the history of all of this. And the well cover is in liking of the Chalice Well. This is it. And it's the Vesica Pisces, the two circles intertwining. And if you look at the middle of this pendant, no, I can't do it that way. You have where the stone is right now,
Uh-huh.
there is in the form of a fish. And
Oh.
that's where the Christians got their fish from. When you see
Oh.
that, see the in
Right.
between them.
That's what in Byzantine, before Christianity was accepted, they used the fish as the emblem for Jesus, as a way underground way of saying
Right.
Jesus.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, Denise says she has the same pendant.
Yay!
I knew I should tag her for this call. Is that cool? So, and she says, "Yay, we love Merlin. He was with me on my birthday too." So
Yeah.
what I'm excited about is this whole opportunity for people to start thinking about um, a way to expand their horizons and their viewpoint on who they are and what they're capable of. This is the perfect kind of trip where you get to go with an experienced guide that knows the area really well and can show you places that no one else will know about, and to encompass also to go to Scotland is like, what a great opportunity, Joseph. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Kathy, for having me here. I appreciate it. Not many places I go, I stay behind the scenes a lot, as you know. You don't see much of
Yes.
me around, but it was
Yes,
definitely an honor to be
but
here with
you have
you.
a lot to teach as a teacher, and a lot of ways to inspire people. And you have a lot of ways of making this change beautifully usable. The other thing is, I want people to know that I work with another wonderful man named Brian Luke Seward, who's a photographer and videographer and a stress management expert. And he takes people mostly to Ireland more than
Uh,
England. But his whole thing is they give back energy to the sacred sites. So there's this give and take where some people are giving of themselves, or their DNA recognizes the space, and it's a communion. So just so you know, there's the dance between you on your timelines, because this is out of time and
Yeah.
space what you're
Right.
doing. But this is the time we came here for. This is the time to really be self-actualized and to start taking steps. And this is steps in a safe way. This is not doing plant medicine in a jungle.
Mhm.
This is a whole different experience of opening and blossoming and reconnecting to your soul. So thank you so much, Joseph.
Thank you. And just a quick point on what you just said. This is part of our trip. This time is part of our theme is giving back and going back into these sites and giving back the energy to that. And I know years ago when I was at the well, people would come in um, and they'd do a whole Reiki attunement around the yew trees, but there would be 30 people. And I know that the person was charging a couple of $1,000 a person, but nothing came back to the well,
Right.
you see? And I stopped that immediately, stopped it. If you'd like to be here with 30 people, we'd like to see a nice donation to the charity for the maintenance of the gardens and everything else that you come in here. And it disrupts the rest of the people because it's a place of silence. It's a place to reflect, to come and sit and get in tune with. That's really what it's about. You come to visit yourself. You don't come to visit the garden on there.
Right.
So
Right.
it's what you
It's a
just said.
remembering, right? I mean,
Mm.
this is an opportunity to really, and I usually end our show saying, you have no idea how powerful you are. And this is the time to wake up and reawaken that power so that we can turn this boat around and create a different reality. We're in a new age. This is not the time of war anymore. So
Right.
there's as many of us that can wake up either through these beautiful things that Joseph does, and you'll have to follow and go to Joseph's website. I posted it. I'll post it everywhere for you all. You'll want to follow and see what these people are doing, because there's a a lot of opportunity for you to see and do and be so much more.
Mm. Mhm.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
So best way to reach you is your website, correct?
Yes, or the milagroworldcenter.com.
Okay.
That's
Okay. I'll put
really that's the website they should really. That's my own personal. Yeah, they can come there. I'll be happy. Have a good
that.
time. My email is there too, Joseph at josephRosado.com.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful. Well,
anyway,
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. What a pleasure it is. Thank you so
pleasure
much.
to you. Thanks,
Okay.
Kathy.
Bye-bye.
Blessings. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.